one of the most revolutionary, distinct, and captivating styles of music to ever be developed, with its propulsive rhythmic groove and its uplifting nature. Nearly an astonishing century ago, the economy was prosperous and thriving as if money were no object, with a booming stock market and many other successful major industries. It was as nothing could go wrong. This time period was referred to and also known as the Roaring Twenties. Though, despite all this major cash flow and the economy being successful, it was almost destined for something awful to happen. It was at that moment in 1929 when the stock market crashed, sending thousands and driving millions of investors and entrepreneurs into poverty. People needed something to enlighten their lives again, and that's when the birth of swing came into play. Swing is a very compelling and engaging style of music. In order to fully comprehend the genre of swing and its era, I will be discussing critical factors and aspects, such as the development of swing and its origins, vital artists and songs that made significant contributions to this style of music, and what exactly makes swing the unique style of music that it is. Initially, the origins and development of swing was evolved through specific aspects and events through the 1900s. One of these events were the Great Depression, which was a very influential component towards the creation of swing. The Great Depression was a time period beginning in 1929, where millions of people were driven into poverty and bankruptcy through a series of unfortunate events such as the stock market crashing and industries failing. Along with this, the economy had reached its peak, and it was on a steady decline with unemployment rates higher than ever, bank loans not being liquidated, also known as bonds, and shares being under their estimated value. All the money in which people had invested into the stock market went down the toilet in almost a blink of an eye. Thousands were jobless, and even more were homeless because the debt in which they needed to pay off was too great of an amount in which they could afford for their real estate. During these depressing and glooming times, the music was reflecting the era with a slow, depressing jazz and the blues. Although industries such as the farming, the record industry, and more were on a steady decline and failing, dance halls and clubs were packed with people having a great time and dancing to the cheerful music of swing. With swing's upbeat and fast tempo, it made people feel like all their troubles had blown away with the breeze. The Great Depression wasn't the only contributing factor towards the development of swing. Before swing, there are many different genres that led to swing. Specifically, one of these styles of music was jazz. Jazz was a huge hit during its time in the early 1900s, with its improvisational and syncopated style, along with a heavy use of polyrhythms, which is a rhythm that makes use of two or more different rhythms simultaneously, and swan notes as well. As its popularity grew and spread throughout many different areas and regions, it gave rise and influenced many distinctive styles that we know today, specifically swing. Within a decade of jazz first being introduced, swing was already on its way. Although jazz plays a huge part in forming swing, there are many other styles of music that were vital to the creation of swing, such as ragtime. This genre of music was syncopated, or it was ragged, and involved the usage of polyrhythms similar to swing. An example of this is The Entertainer by Scott Joplin. Also, it had a heavily influenced melody lines and harmonic progressions, or metric patterns. In relation to this, the blues was also another crucial building block to the structure of swing. The blues was a very organized style, involving a call and response melody, which was a lot like the melodies of swing. Specific scales and chord progressions were used, along with an AAB pattern. Regardless of the many similarities between swing and the blues was a very sorrow and sluggish type of music. Although one person in specific is not given credit of the birth of swing, stride pianists were one of the first groups to introduce this style of music along with many other iconic figures. During the swing era, there were many artists and other contributing songs that gave swing such great significance. Artists such as Duke Ellington, Benny Goodman, and Louis Armstrong were dominant and prominent figures in the swing era. Specifically, breakthrough and essential songs and albums at the time were Scene, Scene, Scene by Benny Goodman, It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing by Duke Ellington,
Don't mean a thing if you ain't got that swing. It don't mean a thing, all you gotta do is swing.
and What a Wonderful World, which was released by Louis Armstrong later in his career.
Me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
When these artists launched their careers and first introduced their songs, the public was so captivated and intrigued by the cheerful and upbeat tempo that there was almost no controversy over it. When people would listen to these talented artists such as Benny Goodman and Louis Armstrong, they were enlightened by it compared to the depressing and slow style of the blues. They became optimistic and all their troubles were washed away. People would forget about the hardships that had fallen upon them and just close their eyes and listen. Along with these artists, there were many other iconic figures and artists that kept swinging along, such as Frank Sinatra, the Dorsey Brothers, Ella Fitzgerald, and more. These artists developed along the way as the swing era grew and thrived prosperously. These artists released key songs and albums too. One of these albums being Classic Sinatra, and which was released by Frank Sinatra. One of the most well-known songs in this album was I've Got the World on a String.
Go. I got the world on a string, sitting on a rainbow. Got the string around my finger. What a world, what a life. I'm in love.
Another famous album released was Sinatra Bassy. Swing became a very distinct and unique genre of music through many contributing elements. Although swing does have many similar attributes in relation to other genres, such as the blues, with patterns in the melody, call and response, and more, it does have many differences as well. One of these differences that made swing so spontaneous was its rhythmic counting, in which contradicted a simple traditional 1 and 2 and count. Instead, the counting of eighth notes is based on a triplet rhythm, which is a 1 and a 2 and so on. Along with this, the ground rhythm of swing, being the rhythm section, is fairly consistent and doesn't change often throughout a song. The rhythm section is the combination of 4 instruments that keep the tempo and beat of a swing song. The instruments include the drum set, piano, bass, and the guitar. They could be considered the motor of the band, and the rhythm section really stresses the patterns and swan eighth notes of the piece. Another unique element of swing are soloists, which complement the melody of a song because after repeating the melody a couple of times, soloists will stand up and play to shake up the rhythm of the piece. The melody is rather simple, though it is singable and unified by many different elements such as lyrics and harmonization. In relation to the rhythm, typically the song is played on a 2 and 4, instead of played on a 1 and 3. Despite the music not being too complex with its repeated melody lines, the music is very thick with a ton of instruments playing contrasting yet unifying parts known as the harmony. These instruments consist of clarinets, trombones, cornets/trumpets, saxophones, and more. In order to enhance this simple melody, a variety of different techniques and aspects are used such as syncopation, harmonization, dynamics, and measures that flow well without too much articulation. Many different individual notes are combined to create harmony, both minor and major, to thicken the melody along with sudden dynamic changes. Overall, swing was a very revolutionary style of music. It made a huge impact on the lives of those alive during the swing era. In order to fully grasp this distinctive style of music, it's vital to know key components and elements, such as the development of swing and its origins, vital artists and songs that made significant contributions to this style of music, and what exactly made swing the unique style of music that it is, and what it is today. So what exactly is swing? It was an easy, flowing, lively, and yet vigorous rhythm that changed the lives of many long ago.